All right, cool. All right, officially hi everyone. How are you? All right, so as you see, well, actually, let me say this first. Just walking through the plant and talking to people, it's really obvious you guys take health, wellness, safety very seriously. And that's really an amazing thing to see. That's really cool. What's my credentials?
You're rapping, that's all I know.
All right, so here's, actually, in a nutshell, I'm giving it to you. Other than being a human being and stressing and figuring out ways to get out of those stressful situations and loving to share that stuff with people, here's how I got into doing what I actually do for a living. I spent a number of years in television news. And if you want to talk stress on so many levels, it's a great industry to be in. November 23rd, 2003, I made a very conscious choice to get out of that industry, running and screaming. And here was the thing that was absolutely driving me batty about it, that I just couldn't take anymore. Anybody watch news of any kind? Local, national, listen to it on the radio? You'll never do it again. Here's the thing. Every single thing that is reported on the news, there is a negative bent to it. There's a whole psychology to it. That's why if you watch a half-hour newscast, you have to get through all the horrific stuff to get the 12 seconds of the kitten that got saved that they tease for a half an hour for you. The whole idea is this. There's a psychology that talks about if stuff is actually nice, we don't stick with it for very long. We see it, we go, oh, that's wonderful to hear, and then we go back into life. But when something has a negative bent to it and is actually stressful, the psychology is give you just enough information to get you angry, upset, irate, a little aggravated, because our human psychology is you're going to stick with it. It's going to pull you in. So that is why the newscaster is going to say things from the desk such as, today we have a 10% rate of unemployment. He or she will never tell you there's a 90% chance or 90% rate of employment today. That's an A. It's not to say we don't struggle at times in our lives, but we have 90% employment when somebody says that from a news desk. If the weathercaster says there's a 20% chance of rain, he'll never say there's an 80% chance of sun, because the psychology of it doesn't work. But what happens when someone says there's a 20% chance of rain? What do we think? It's going to rain. Great, and if I'm outside, that's going to be a pain and all this stuff. We love negatives. And so what ended up happening was, that's kind of what drove me from that industry. And what I love to do now, again, for 14 years now, is simply help people shift their thinking. Because just like newscasts, don't ever listen to what they're telling you. Flip it and listen to what they just didn't tell you. Every time you hear it's partly cloudy, I guarantee it's also partly sunny, but they're never going to use those words. And so what happens in our brains is we start to get into this mode of, I can see everything negative, but it's really hard to turn around and go, everything's actually fine. This isn't as big a deal as I'm making it to be. And so we've kind of lost that ability sometimes to just flip in the moment and not focus on what's going wrong, but simply focus on what's going right. Because I can find 17 things going wrong at any given moment. I only need to find one thing going right to get something done sometimes. So again, the idea of developing a great working relationship with your stress is, it's not going away. Right? We live in a stressful world, we have stressful lives, stressful things happen. That's why it's not called stress elimination. It's called stress management. So what I want to share with you today are some tools, tips, just really easy to understand, easy to apply things that hopefully you can walk out that door and use in your professional lives, your personal lives, just be able to in the moment shift when it makes sense for you. So that's in a nutshell. Does that work?
Sure.
Cool, all right. I'll tell you if we lived up. I'll ask if I lived up to it at the end, all right? Okay, so my first question is, what is stress actually? I got trigger happy. All right, so what's stress? We talk about it all the time.
Kids.
We deal with it. Kids.
Children, yeah.
Valid.
Children.
Children. Absolutely valid. Work. Valid.
Raises.
Raises or lack of. Right? Right? Stress stress comes in a whole bunch of different forms, right? Personal, professional, we have stress. Anybody not stressed yet today about something? Nice, all right, I got 3 of you. All right, cool. All right. So why do we need to do something about it? Why do we care?
You're not stressed out.
But you know what? Let's just get right to the point. You know what stress does? Here's what stress does. Your body, your mood, your behavior, look at some of this stuff. Everything from headaches, fatigue, sleeping problems, stomach issues, to mood things, just being anxiety, lack of focus, depression, no motivation. It's just our behavior, reaching for anything to kind of push it down a little bit, whether it's food, drugs, tobacco, anything. Here's the thing. This is all contagious. And in a work environment, in a home environment, if one person is stressing out, I guarantee it's affecting every single person on the team, whatever that team may be. Stress is completely contagious. So why do we want to do something about it? If you can learn 1 or 2 quick little things that might help you in those stressful situations, whether it's be the leader, be the person who stands up and says, I know this is really a bad situation, we've got to get this fixed. Maybe it'll allow you to be that person to go, okay, stop, this is all going wrong, this sucks, but what do we need to do right now to get out of it, to move on, to change it, to fix it? So here's a real basic understanding of why stress happens to our bodies, what actually happens. Because we haven't actually evolved much since caveman days as human beings, which is kind of interesting to think about. But here's the reality. Our bodies are machines. And like any other machine, right outside this door, if you give it what it needs, it works pretty well, right? What happens when you stop giving it what it needs? Breaks down, it stops, gives you problems. Our bodies are no different. Here's exactly what happens when something starts to stress us. Back in caveman days, we're sitting in our caves, minding our own business, and a woolly mammoth or saber-toothed tiger, whatever was roaming around back then, walks by the cave. We see it, and immediately our brain takes over and goes, you're going to need to either fight this thing, or you're going to need to run like heck. We call it the fight or flight stress response today. So our bodies would kick into fight or flight. And our brain goes, okay, you're going to need adrenaline, you're going to need cortisol, you're going to need all kinds of stress hormones and chemicals. I'm going to shoot all those out into your body. And your body goes, got it, I'm going to use all that. I'm going to get your breathing really high and shallow. I'm going to put all the blood to your extremities so you can either get ready to fight or you can get ready to run. And guess what happens? You've completely been hijacked by your brain because it's on autopilot now. Now back then, that response saved our lives. And today, thank goodness we still have it, because if there's, God forbid, a fire out there, if the house is on fire, I want that response to kick in. Because I gotta get who I need to get out of the house, and I need to take care of myself, right? But oftentimes today, we don't have those type of situations constantly in our lives, but we've got the fight or flight response going on constantly. Because today, our brains cannot tell the difference between a threat to our safety and a threat to our self-esteem. And the moment our self-esteem takes a knock, fight or flight kicks in. I'll give you a perfect example. You either do this or you know someone who does this. You ever been driving down the highway and everything's perfectly fine, and all of a sudden someone cuts in front of you and you got to slam on your brakes? Now at that moment in time, there are 2 possible responses. There are no more. Response number 1, you slam on your brakes, and you start screaming and you start yelling, and sometimes you get so worked up, within a matter of moments, you have to pull up next to the person so you can look at them and stare at them and look at them, and you get mad because they're not looking at you. Some of you were laughing, you know exactly what this is. Now at that moment, the guy that cut me off did not cause my stress. It didn't cause my fight or flight. How I chose to respond to it kicked me into fight or flight. And because my brain just shot all that adrenaline and cortisol and stress stuff into my body, if that happens at 7 o'clock in the morning, At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're in that mode sometimes, because that stuff's just got to play out. Now, if you go back, the second response could have been slam on my brakes and going, glad I was paying attention, and just move on with my day. So a lot of times as stuff's happening to us, we're the ones actually creating the stress response. Because life isn't about what's happening to us. We can't control that. What are some things we can't control in life? Gas prices, right? Traffic, the weather, other people. We could have like a list of 100 things here if we took 30 seconds. I can't control any of that, so why am I focusing on worrying about that? I'm stressing myself out. I can't control that. What can I control? A short list.
The things you can.
Me, you got it. How I'm choosing to respond, how I'm choosing to react, what I'm doing about it, how I'm thinking about it, what my choices are. So life's not about what's happening to us. You can't control any of that. You gotta let some of that be. But I've got a lot of control over how I'm choosing to respond to what's happening to me, because that's actually what throws us into stress mode. Kind of interesting. So the question is, how do I go from this when I'm here to I got it under control? So let's talk about just a handful of ways that you can do that in the moment. Again, it's called stress management, not stress elimination, because it's not going anywhere. It's about developing a great relationship with that stress in the moment. So first thought, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude about it. Don't complain. Complaining is probably one of the #1 reasons for stress, and you know what it accomplishes? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And oftentimes, the time we take to complain about something is the same amount of time we could have done something about it and moved past it. So let's talk for a minute about 3 things. The first one is control. So I mentioned some of them. What are some things in your real world, day-to-day life that you don't have control over?
How many cookies I eat.
All right, we're going to put that to the side.
No, really, it causes a lot of stress.
All right, so here's the thing. Stop buying cookies.
I can't.
Stress over. All right, so he's the heckler over there, is that right?
No,
It's real. It is. All right, so valid. Cookies, what else? What else in your daily lives? Bring it real world for you.
Bills.
Bills? Absolutely.
How many presses are down when I come in the morning?
All right, so there we go, right? Because you know what reality is? I can stop eating cookies. Moving on. I can stop spending and my bills are going to go down, right? Reality, it's interesting because when we think about stress, the first thing that we often come to, all of us, is all these things that really are things we have a lot more control over than we think. Again, most of my stress I've caused, or I cause, if that's the case, I can do something about that. Something I can't control, presses are down when you walk in the door. What happens in that moment? After the swearing, what happens?
Stress out a little bit.
All right, you stress out. So what do you do about it?
Start delegating.
Complain, awesome. All right, once we get past complaining, what happens? How do you get it fixed?
Delegate.
Okay, and you delegate. So we move to delegating, because if I stand there and complain, because I'm not happy, I'm sure if I walk in the door and the presses are down, how many of you are happy when that happened? I got you, all right. Yeah, we're not. That's a situation that's not good, especially to start that day off. And that's going to affect everything going forward. So what do you need to do? I could complain. We'll probably complain for a minute or two. All right. Did that get them fixed? No. What gets them fixed? Jump into action. What gets them fixed? Yeah. So again, the idea is when we think about control, we can control so much more than we think we can at any given moment, because it's so much easier to go, well, it's something else, it's someone else's fault, it's something else. Totally human nature. And no judgment, just awareness. Again, I'll go back to the news idea. Guess what? We are surrounded 24/7 by these voices, by mass media. You can't go to a McDonald's today without a flat screen TV, right, and CNN or Fox or something on, and what's across the bottom in bright red letters usually?
Breaking bad.
Breaking news! right? And basically, if you listen to what the anchor is saying, is we have no new information, we have no facts. Sometimes we don't even know if something's actually going on. But guess what? Our production department, our news director said, get on the air and start talking about this. So the idea is, we've become accustomed to blowing things up and out of proportion. That really isn't breaking news. It's something that I can go, you know what? Stop. What do I need to do about this to get it fixed? Because if I can do that in an hour, is it up and working and I'm fine? Everything's fine. Hmm?
Quit watching the news.
If you walk out with nothing else today, just tune out. Turn it all off. Your life will be so much better. There's nothing there you're missing, I promise. So again, we have so much more control than we think. Because the easy thing is always to complain. It's our go-to, and that's fine. You know what? I gotta get that out. But if you can immediately jump into that action mode of, okay, what can I do to fix this right now? I don't need to think of 10 reasons why I'm ticked about this happening. It's so much easier to think of one thing that's gonna get it fixed and jump into action. So when we complain, we don't take action. So you choose one or the other, right? Same thing going back to the car. I can complain all day long, and guess what? I got 5 hours right now where I'm ticked off, no matter where I'm going, no matter who I'm talking to, no matter what the situations are, because I threw myself into fight or flight. Or I said, glad you didn't hit me. Moving on. How many of you would say we create half of our own stress? 70%, 80%. Yeah.
My father still provided.
Yep, and again, the idea is, I'm not gonna say 100%, because we live in stressful times, stressful worlds, stressful things are going on, we all have that. But you create the vast majority of your own stress, because it's not about what's happening, it's about how you're choosing to respond. What's happening doesn't throw us into fight or flight. We're machines. The only thing that flips that switch is if I choose to respond and start going, ah, about it. Because our brains go into survival mode. Interesting to know. We'll start there. Another thing that creates a bunch of stress is what I like to call time traveling. Do you want to share with the entire group? No, that's all right. I'm just signaling you out because you're traveling about time. All right. All right, you can't have a better tomorrow if you're thinking about yesterday. We do this thing in our heads a lot too that's called, it's called time traveling. Have you ever driven somewhere that you've driven dozens of times before? You get there and you honestly don't remember actually driving there? Sure. How frightening is that when you stop and think about it?
I usually drive right by.
Yeah. We don't,
My husband's is like,
there's so little time when we're actually in the present moment, because we're time traveling. We're in our heads thinking about what happened in that meeting yesterday. What did that person say to me? Wait, I was supposed to get something to them. Or you're thinking about tomorrow, you have something, you're going on vacation or something, your brain's already there. We're almost never in the moment. And there's only one time that we have control, ever. It's in the moment, right now. I can't control what happened. I can't get in a time machine and go control what's gonna happen and come back. I can control now. That's it. So oftentimes what's happening is when we're stressing, what kicks us again into fight or flight often is we're daydreaming. We're somewhere else and we're not in the moment. And guess what? The only place you have control is right now. You walk out that door, you think you know what's gonna be facing you. We're not sure. When it does, in the moment is what's gonna get you ready to go for it. It's gonna get you ready to take that action. Time traveling is one of those things constantly we do. And catch yourself doing it. If you do that, I guarantee, you're feeling out of control. Your brain's going into survival mode because it's not sure what to expect. Or if you expect something and something different happens, fight or flight mode, instantly. So control. What are the things you can control and what are the things you can't? I'm going to hold this for a moment. I want to move on. We'll come back to it though. So, a person is defeated not by their opponents, but by themselves. Again, I would say easily, and studies will show you this over and over and over if you have any interest in looking at them, 75 to 80% of our stress is completely self-created. And you might say, no, that's impossible. No, it's not. So you complain about the stat, if you think about it, is what we'll start doing. But the reality is, again, it's not about what's happening. What's happening is never the stressful piece. How you're choosing to respond to it or react is the piece that's absolutely key. Perspective is what determines how you're going to react or respond. Let me give you some examples here. Let's say you just bought a beautiful home. Okay? You just bought a nice house for yourself, and that's actually a picture of your house. Now let's talk about perspective for a moment. The buyer sees that as your house. Why? Because the buyer, of course, is looking for everything he can to get wrong so that we can make sure we get that offer a little bit lower. Your lender sees your house like this. The appraiser, of course, walks in and sees your house like this. But the county tax assessor sees your house as that. Same house, perspective. If you have two people looking at the same thing, I guarantee they're going to see something totally different. Now, if you take a look, if you have your sheets, take a quick look and you'll see a picture of somebody on there. I want you to hold that picture close to your face. Close to your face and tell me who you see. All right, so I'm hearing Marilyn Monroe and Einstein. Now everyone has the same sheet. So do this. Whoever you see, I want you to hold your paper up. Hold your paper up like a foot in the air. Go look at somebody else's sheet that's a few feet away from you and tell me who you see. Or if you want, you can even look at the front and turn your paper over and look at it backwards. All right, so how many of you see Einstein? How many of you see Marilyn? Okay, how many of you see both? All right, so this is an example. This is an example of a picture that's used in a courtroom to discount eyewitness testimony. And all it shows, for their purposes and for ours, is two people at any given moment can be looking at exactly the same thing and not only see something completely different, because Einstein and Marilyn Monroe don't really look anything alike. So not only are they seeing totally different things, but neither of them is wrong. As a matter of fact, both of them are right. So it's interesting sometimes, again, it's just our society. No judgment, just awareness. It's our culture. When we see something and we are sure we're seeing Albert Einstein, if someone walks in and says, I'm seeing Marilyn Monroe, our first response is often, you're crazy. No, you don't. That's not who that is. But it's amazing how often, if someone's standing at a slightly different angle, a slightly different distance, they might see something you completely missed. And we get stressed and complain because they're wrong and I'm right. How can you see Marilyn Monroe? Are you nuts? But the reality is, if you step back and look at it from a little bit of a different angle, somebody sees something you don't. That's a pretty cool thing to know. So when we do the, no, I'm wrong, you're right, we instantly throw ourselves into that stress mode. Fight or flight. Good luck with that for the next few hours. We're just machines. We just put in the shot of adrenaline. Good luck. It's not going away until it's done running through your body. But if we take a moment to step back and go, tell me what you see. I don't see that, but tell me what you see. And you make that attempt to see something. It's amazing sometimes what we learn, what we see. If I'm working on a problem, I'm so focused on it sometimes that I can't see what someone else can. Have you ever been looking for your phone or keys and you need to leave the house and you can't find them? And you're running around for a few minutes and you're starting to get stressed because you might be late, you're looking for something. And someone walks in the room and says, what are you doing? I'm looking for my phone, I gotta go. And they look literally in front of you and say, isn't that your phone? Yeah. The moment we get in stress mode, we can't see what's sitting right next to us. Because we're in our heads freaking out about everything. It's not right there. Our answers are almost always sitting next to us if we just stop, took a couple breaths, chilled out, and look, you'd find what you needed instantly. So again, we kick ourselves into that. And if I'm my own problem, it's pretty cool. I'm my own solution. I can do something about it. All right, here's another idea in perspective. So at age 4, success is simply not fiddling in your pants. It's a big success. At age 12, it's having some good friends. At age 17, it's having a driver's license. At age 35, might be having a few bucks, maybe. At age 50, it's maybe having a few bucks. At age 70, it's having a driver's license. At age 75, it's having a couple of good friends. And of course, at 80, so perspective. If I threw a word out there and said, what does success mean to you? If you had 100 people, they'd give you 100 different answers. It's perspective. I don't care what it means to everyone else. What does it mean to you? Get clear on you and what things are doing. Because if you're here, or here, or here, and one of these is your idea of success, you're probably not going to get there. You're in a different place. You're in the wrong place. Here's another perspective thought. So imagine this is a city bus. It might be right out on Pearl Road out here. It's an RTA bus, and it's driving down the street, and it is definitely going either that direction or this direction. Take a moment and decide for yourselves, is it heading that way or this way? All right, how many think it's heading that way? How many think it's heading this way? It is in fact moving. All right, so here's the thing. Let me preface the answer by saying over 97% of kindergartners who are asked this question get it almost instantly. Less than 4% of intelligent adults get this correct for the right reason. The point here is, when I give you the answer is, the moment we begin overthinking something, we're gone. Even if an answer is very simple. As soon as we're out there thinking. So this bus is very obviously moving in this direction. Anybody have any idea why?
Or you said so.
Well, that's one reason. All right, door. Did you say door? Awesome. So tell me about the door.
On the other side.
Can you see the door? If this is an RTA bus on the street, which side of the bus is the door on? Therefore, it's on that side. You can't see it. It must be moving this way. Perspective. Oftentimes, the moment we start overthinking something, we're gone. And that person who can walk in the door can go, it's right there. Or, oh, you didn't flip this switch. Oh, you forgot to do X. Stress completely hijacks our brains. Throws us into that fight or flight. And sometimes, the simpler the thing, the more difficult it is. You'd think by this point I'd stop hitting the right button, but no. All right, so is there such a thing as good stress? Absolutely. There's actually an entire area of study now called eustress, EU stress, that's positive stress. And what that's all about is, if we didn't have certain things in our lives that had deadlines, that had to get done, we would never get a bunch of things done, because everything would go by the wayside. So sometimes something like a deadline is stressful, because I gotta get it done, but those things get it done. And so that same adrenaline that in a negative situation puts us in fight or flight and doesn't always have a great outcome. That same adrenaline is the same thing that allows us to do those wonderfully positive things where you need focus, you need motivation, you need those things to get stuff done and take that action. So absolutely, absolutely. So how do you develop a great working relationship with it? So I'm going to toss out a handful of things that are very common. You probably do some of these things. You know people who do some of these things. Let's just touch on them a little bit and leave with, again, kind of a couple of tools that you can walk out the door with and hopefully apply right away. I mentioned that idea of time traveling. It's a big one. If you're not in this moment, you got no control. So anytime you find yourself where you're feeling out of control in a stressed way, I guarantee you're not where you are at the moment, as silly as that sounds. Stop, shift your brain back to what am I doing now, what do I need to do right in this moment. It'll immediately stop that fight or flight response, instantly. One time we have control, it's right now. And the cool thing about that is if you missed it just now, hold on. Yep, there it is again. Now is always here. So if you missed it just then, just do it now. Just do it now. Just do it. Take that action. Flip the switch. This is that thing I was talking about with the news. The idea that if somebody tells you it's partly cloudy, stop just listening to half the story. Flip it. What does that mean? It's partly sunny. Right? There is that 20% chance of rain. Flip it. That's true. There's also an 80% chance of sun. So find those moments, because they happen dozens of times a day for most people, where we default to what's going wrong instead of just flipping it to what is going right. Again, it takes your brain instantly into, oh, I don't have to go into survival mode. I see a little bit of a balance there. We're fine. The saber-toothed tiger is not chasing me right now. We can get by it. Find the humor. Oftentimes, if something's happening to us, it's stressful. If the same thing's happening to someone else, it's hysterical. Have you ever noticed that? If I am walking down the street and I trip, it is not funny. I'm embarrassed. That is not at all cool. Why are you laughing at me? If my friend stops and trips down the street, that's the funniest thing I've seen all day. It goes back to perspective. Most of our stress, the things that we stress about, if you flip them and look if they happen to someone else, you'll find a humor in it. Mel Brooks. Anyone know who Mel Brooks is? Mel Brooks. I love Mel Brooks to a T. Mel Brooks one time in an interview they said, what is comedy? What is comedy to you? He said, the comedy formula is very simple. Comedy is tragedy plus time. Just think of how many things also we stress about or we've stressed about that a year down the line or 2 years or 6 months down the line you look back on and go, oh my goodness, that was a wild ride. We look at it very differently when we look back on it. But when you're in the moment, you feel out of control. Flip that switch, get right back into present time, and find the humor in it. Yes and versus yes but. We yes but ourselves all the time. Has anyone ever done any kind of improv, theater type stuff, or know anyone who's done? Okay, so if you know anything about improvisation, theater, the whole idea is there's no script. You get up and you just kind of do what happens. But there's one rule that can never, ever, ever be broken with improv, and it's called the yes and. And the yes and is simply, you can never say no. If someone says something, you have to acknowledge it and add to it. Now, there's an elephant walking down the street. Yes, there is, and how's he getting in that little Nissan? You have to, that's why I didn't do improv. Hopefully they do that much better than I just did. But the idea being, you can't say, no, there's no elephant, because it stops the scene. Now, it's interesting to think we don't yes and in our lives. We yes but all the time. Something gets you excited or motivated or interested for a second, and you go, yeah! And then your negative brain kicks in and goes, but I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the energy, I don't have. And we take something that really got us excited for a moment, and we completely squash it. Yes, but. Anytime you find yourself yes butting, try and yes and it. Go, okay, let's say it does work. I don't think it will, but let's say it does work. If it works, what's that going to do for us? Well, if it works, then we can do this. And if we can do that, what happens? Well, if that works, then we can do this. Try and yes and it. See the possibilities, and then go back and try and yes but it. It will be almost impossible to do. But if yes but is our first reaction, instead of our yes and, it's all going downhill.
Mike, pass it back.
All right, pre-TSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder is a very real thing. We throw ourselves into pre-traumatic stress disorder all the time. We do it through worrying, because 90+% of what we worry about never happens. But we think about things and overthink things before they happen. What if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And we literally put ourselves mentally and physically through this awful situation, and then the situation never happens. Worry's one of those things that, again, there's not a whole lot of validity in worry. There are some certain times when it's a good thing to worry. Most of our lives are not about worrying. If you ever what if something, just answer the question. What if it doesn't work? Well, then we try something else. We ask that question, but we rarely answer it. And answering it quickly stops that from happening. Taking labels off your life. We have so many labels these days. One of the biggest things that happens that creates stress is all of the labels of things we think we should be. This could be an entire other 2-hour workshop on its own, but you got a million labels in your life. Coworker, team member, boss, employee, mom, dad, kid, brother, sister, millions of labels. Make sure the labels in your life are ones that are valid for you. A lot of times people label you, and it's not really who you are, and that speaks to this. If you think your life is a movie, you're the writer, you're the director, you can yell cut at any moment and shift the scene if you need to, shift the direction, and you're playing all the roles. Make sure they're roles you want to be playing. Get out of your head. Nothing good ever happens up here. Nothing. Contrary to popular belief, nothing. If you're ever in your head, I guarantee you're stressing. Find opportunities to get out of your head as quickly as possible. As soon as you're in your head, we're overthinking. As soon as we're overthinking, we're instantly in that fight or flight mode. Again, we're running from a saber-toothed tiger when something very little is actually in front of us or at stake. So getting out of your head. And when you're in your head, we tend to should on ourselves a lot. Don't do that. Don't should on yourselves anymore. I should have done this. We should have done that. I should do this. No, do it or don't do it. Any Star Wars fans in here? Yoda, phenomenal, very simple. There is no try. Do or don't do. So there's no more should. If you think you should do something, just go do it. If you keep saying it, you're not doing it, you probably don't need to be doing it. Push it to the side. Do it or don't do it. Words like should, awful words, get them out of your vocabulary forever. And that goes again with getting in your head. Careful what you're saying to yourself. We're not kind to ourselves. We're not kind to ourselves in our brains. If anyone ever talked to me the way I talk to myself sometimes, there'd probably be a fight. We're not kind to ourselves. Careful what you're saying. Because that subconscious brain is listening, and it's going to do exactly what you tell it. If every time you knock something over, you say, oh, idiot. Guess what? There is a label you don't need. You got it. And in the situations where you're the one that has the answer, guess what? Your brain's going to go, sit down, idiot. We're hardwired. We're machines. So careful what you're saying. Last couple here. Take your oxygen first. If you've ever been on an airplane, and they tell you if the oxygen masks fall, right, from the console, what do they tell you to do first? Put it on yourself first, and then go help everyone else. Why do we say that?
Because you need to be calm.
You got it. You need your oxygen. Guess what? If I want to help everyone else, I can go put their masks on, help them with their masks, and guess what? I'm going to pass out. Because I didn't take my oxygen first. And all those people I wanted to help, not only can I not help, but now they got to stop what they're doing to come help me. So now I'm the burden. Especially giving, kind people want to do for everyone else constantly. That's great. Get your oxygen first. You put your mask on first and make a point to do that on a daily basis. You can help everyone you want to all day long. Everyone on that plane can get helped by you, but only if you do something to help you take your oxygen first. And that simply goes to breathe. When somebody's stressing out, what do we tell them to do?
Take a deep breath.
Just take a deep breath. We tell everyone else to do that. We can fix them. But it's not often our first go-to. So something as simple as when you're feeling stressed, stop for just a moment and take that oxygen first. Take a couple of deep breaths. We tell people do that because it works. We're machines. Stress level goes up, a couple of breaths, pushes it right back down. All you're doing is you're oxygenating and getting blood flow going. And we mentioned this too now. If you're a news junkie, that's as bad as any other addiction, I think, at this point, and it's easy to get into. You know what? Most of what you're hearing, number one, a lot of it doesn't affect your life directly. Two, I guarantee you're getting half of a story. Find an outlet or two that literally allows you to get what you need. Get educated if you want, and get in, get out. Go have intelligent conversations with other people instead of watching the talking heads, because there's a psychology to it, and they're only giving you enough to make you upset. If it bleeds, it leads. There's a whole psychology to that industry, and it causes, it creates an awful lot of stress. And last thing, as silly as this sounds, smile. It's amazing. If anybody ever took a picture of most of us while you're just sitting, whether it's in a meeting or having a conversation, usually we have that resting face, which goes by many different names, and we're often kind of like this. You got it. You got it. Can I share here?
Yes.
Okay, it'd be appropriate. It's a resting bitch face. It is. Watch people when you're having conversations. You'll be amazed. Most people are like, or if they're listening in a meeting, we don't even know how we're showing up, and it's affecting everyone else. Because if someone's got that resting face and I'm in a meeting talking, my take on that might be, they don't look happy. They don't agree with what I'm saying. Uh-oh. It gets into a confrontational mode. It's perception. And guess what? Perception is not reality. If it was, it'd be called reality, not perception. So think of some of these things. It's so simple just to do little tiny things. Taking a breath. Smile every once in a while when you think about it, as long as it's an appropriate situation. You don't want to walk in and everything's down and you go, Robin told me I should smile. Exactly. All right, and in the interest of time, I want to go ahead and, whoop. We'll never see, in the interest of time, my fingers were clicking through. Can I share one last quick analogy? Okay, one last quick one. So, when we're thinking about what we're doing from a stress standpoint, we're kind of trying to identify some ways. Hopefully there's something you're going to walk out of here and have one little thing, whether it's as simple as breathe or flip the switch or think of what you're hearing and listen to the other side. Hope maybe it's Marilyn Monroe, Albert Einstein. Give someone a chance to at least get you to understand what they're seeing differently. It might be the solution to the problem you're trying to deal with. But other people are one of the biggest reasons for stress, because we can't change other people. And whether we're in home or work environments, we're oftentimes with people, and sometimes there's some different dynamics going on. So I want to throw you one quick analogy. It's simply called get off my bus. And it's something that might help some of you when you're thinking of working in teams or just in your life, having people around you. Get off my bus. Here's the analogy. We're all born, and we're bus drivers. And we spend our lives driving our buses through our lives. And as we drive, people are constantly getting on our buses, and they're going off of our buses. Some of them come on for a moment, and then leave. Some come on for a lifetime. Some move to the front, the back. They're there, but they're kind of shifting as you're going through different parts of your life. But anytime you feel stuck in life, there are 5 questions I would suggest you ask about your bus, because you might get some real quick clarity for yourself. Question number 1. Who's driving your bus? Are you still in the seat at the front of the bus, or did you get up and let somebody else take it over? Or did someone jump in front of you and say, move to the side, I'm driving now? Who's driving your bus? Get some clarity on that. Second question, if we look at an RTA bus, what's across the top? Where are you going? What is it you're trying to do? A lot of times when we're stuck, it's just that we're kind of all over the place. Take a moment to stop and go, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to accomplish? It might not be the thing 30 years from now. It might be the thing for tomorrow or next week. What is it I'm trying to do? Because if you don't have clarity on that, you're just driving around aimlessly like people do oftentimes. And if you get to a stop sign, you're not going to move. So the third question is, turn around and look at your passengers. Who needs to get off your bus? And I guarantee as soon as I said that, everyone had a face or a name come to their brain. We know who these people are in our lives, whether they're the naysayers, the negative people, whether they're not. We know who these people are. If you don't know, they're the person that when your phone rings and you look at caller ID, you go, I'm not dealing with this right now. It's that person, they're one of them. And we all have those people, it's okay, right? Who needs to get off your bus? Now you can't kick mom off the bus, you can't necessarily kick team member off the bus perhaps, but a lot of times those people are getting to us in a not healthy way, not just because they're there doing things, but because we're focusing so much of our time and attention on them. Because when somebody does something kind of stupid, anybody else go and start calling people and, do you know what he did today? Do you know what she said today? And we relive it. It was obnoxious in the moment, but then we relive it by telling people 5 times or replaying it in our heads. You know what? If we take that focus off of them, they naturally drift back a few seats. Let that happen. If it's cathartic, throw them off the bus. You can stop and open the door and throw someone off. You can tell them, it depends. But situationally, who needs to get off your bus or get moved a little bit back? Fourth question is, whose bus do you need to get off of? Because a lot of times, we get into things or we get on things and maybe they were a fit at some point. They're not anymore. It's okay to walk away from that. Whose bus do you need to get off of? You don't have to stay a passenger on every bus in your life. You can make a choice. And then the last question is, who needs to get on your bus? If you think of that destination, what is it I'm trying to do? If it's something that you're not already doing but you do want to do, go find the team members. Go find the players that are going to be the people you need to get on your bus to help you get where you want to go. So think of your bus, think of you, do some switching of the flipping of the switch, and breathe and smile. It seems so simple, but some good stuff. So thank you for your time, especially on a warm day in this room. And hopefully you got something to walk out of here and use. So thanks, guys.
Okay, everybody sign in. Gary, you got anything? Nope. All right, have a good day. Thank you. Oh, boy, how's Bob?
Hey, I had a real hard time finding this place.
Oh, no, you're good.
She gave me the wrong address. She gave me the wrong address. Oh, okay. So she told me that. So that's the lady. We got another shirt tomorrow. I can introduce you to. But yeah, you're fine. I got here and I was. She told me it was wrong. She gave one number wrong. I found out when I asked them how to do it. That's all I said. Oh, okay. Yeah, you didn't do it, bitch. Yeah, I was driving around like. That's exactly what I did. That's all I was over the back. I didn't know.
I'm sure they'll let you know. Yeah.